Welcome to a demonstration of how to assess your environment for the ShellShock vulnerability. So I'm using CloudForms, going to log in. I'm starting right from scratch for this demonstration. So in here, this environment has no control policies, I believe, currently set up. So we're just going to go into control and we're going to import in the ShellShock off-the-shelf policy. Yeah, so no policies are defined, so let's go and do an import for that. We browse to the file we wish. There it is here. Okay, so import ShellShock policy YAML. Upload the policy into CloudForms. Should be noted that this demonstration is Manage IQ or CloudForms agnostic. Okay, press commit to import. Yes, please. And now you can see we've got a new profile called Linux Security Check inside of there. We've got the ShellShock vulnerability. We've got the condition for the vulnerability assessment. And then we've also got a compliance check that's going to basically, upon a failure, it's going to turn around and say, right, generate a log message, mark it as non-compliant, and send an email to the security team. So who's the security team? Oh, it's me. Okay. So that's the policy imported in. The next thing to do is to actually go and assign it to a provider. Now, if we do it at a provider level, we're going to obviously affect every single machine running inside this provider. So that's one way to obviously globally track the assessment across all virtual machines in that provider. Another way would be to obviously just go to the individual virtual machine. So let's select my bash tester one. So here's bash tester one. You can see all of the detail about it. Its IP address, host name, packages, and so on. Everything's to here. So the first thing to do is let's go and manage the policies at bash tester. Currently, there's no policies assigned. If I select the Linux security check, I can assign that to bash tester one. All right. So if I go back to the VM view, you'll notice that there's a slight difference between bash tester one and everybody else. So bash tester one has now got a shield showing that it's got policy assigned to it. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is packages. So by clicking on packages, I can select a slightly bigger view, to be honest with you. So let's go and find bash. Current version is 4.12.15 EL6_4 is the bash version. So I'm doing all of this with inside of CloudForms Manage IQ. What I need to do now is I need to do a compliance check to see whether this version is actually a valid fixed version or not for the ShellShock issue. So by going back to the virtual machine, I can simply select compliance check. Check compliance of last known good configuration. Yep, please. You'll notice here on the right hand side underneath compliance, the status is never verified and history is not available. So we now need to wait for CloudForms to do a compliance check against this virtual machine. And after a minute or so, we come back with the status of non-compliant less than a minute ago. There's history available, which basically means that we've done at least one scan. So we click on the status here. We can actually drill down to the detail of what's failed, and we can see here that the policy ShellShock vulnerability has failed against the bash package. So there you go. We now know that this machine is vulnerable to the ShellShock vulnerability. Let's go and remediate it. So to do that, I'm just going to drop into my bash tester one shell. Let's do a yum list bash first, and you'll see here that there's the version that CloudForms was reporting, 4.12.15 EL6.4. And there's a 4.12.15 EL6.5.2 available. So let's do a yum update bash. Okay, yes please, I will have the bash update please. Okay, so very quick RHN process to update bash. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to CloudForms. So we now know that the system's been updated. If we go back to CloudForms, we can now issue a smart state analysis. Okay, so we need to refresh the information. So if we do a smart state analysis, click OK. We'll wait a minute, and in a minute's time, the number of packages here wouldn't have changed, but the detail to the package would have changed because obviously there's a newer version. Okay, we can see here that the bash tester one is currently going for a smart state analysis. Just waiting for the process to start. Okay, so that's the process started. Okay, so the smart state analysis is now completed at bash tester 1. So if we go back to bash tester 1, okay, here it is here, and we obviously wouldn't normally check this manually, but I want to prove to you that the information is updated. So again, search for bash. And there you go. So bash is now on 4.1.2, same version as it was before, and the release is 15 EL6. Instead of it being EL6.4 like it was before, it's now EL6.5.2. So we actually already know that it was updated because we did it ourselves. CloudForms also knows that this machine's been updated now. So let's go back to a standard compliance check. Just go compliance check me. And if we wait a minute, CloudForms will come back and update that status, hopefully from non-compliant to compliant. Okay, so after that minute, we can now see that the compliant status has gone from non-compliant with a red X to a compliant message saying that, yep, less than a minute ago we were checked. Our status is now compliant. If we click on this, we can see what policies are compliant, and the bash vulnerability package has been checked and it's compliant. So there you go. That's a fairly quick demonstration of, you know, importing a policy, assigning it, and checking, and then remediating and checking once more to ensure success. So, you know, some of the other things that you can do here, which I suppose would normally fall into a part 2, would be some history. If we click on the history, we can see when this virtual machine was non-compliant, the date and timestamp, what it was non-compliant against, and you can see here that it was remediated shortly afterwards based on that date and time. Some other things which we've got going on as part of this story would be clicking down here, and you can see here that it was drift history. So we can click here and we can say, right, if we select this 3 minutes ago and 15 minutes ago and do a drift between the two. So these are the smart state scans, and I can actually say, right, using these smart state scans, can you tell me the difference between the guest applications on this virtual machine, how it's changed between these two date and times? And hopefully we're going to see nice and clearly that it was bash that was changed, but obviously that allows us to identify any other changes that have happened at the same time. So here's all the guest applications that are different. What we need to do is we need to look at only values with different settings. So there you go. By filtering down on only differences, we can now see that bash as a package has changed from version 4.1.2 15 EL6.4 to 4.1.2 15 EL6.5.2. So that's nice and clear too. It being able to identify the changes between different smart state scans that were taken. And then I suppose another final piece of this operation story would be to look at the genealogy. And we can see that this virtual machine was actually born from a template. So we can actually select this virtual machine and its template, and we can say, hey, why don't we compare bash tester 1 against the template that it was originally born from, and see how the differences are between those two. So again, standard state and drift with CloudForms. Let's drill into some of the detail. Let's go to guest applications. This will now pick up the smart state scans that exist for the template and for bash tester 1, and then we'll just drill into only the differences, and we can come down here and we can see here that actually between these two versions, or between these two virtual machines, one being a template, one being a VM, that bash is different between the two. We know that because obviously the original template version had the vulnerable 6.4 release, and actually the kernel has been slightly modified as well as part of a previous update. Obviously we could use state drift to go and see where that kernel was updated before. So that really does pretty much conclude most of the stuff there for the vulnerability assessment. Obviously you can bring in other reporting, you can create dashboard widgets to monitor the progress of your remediation for the ShellShock error. Hope this has been helpful to you. You'll be able to download the control policy, which it will be available on my cloudformsnow.com blog.